Hello, hello, hello. Good evening. Happy Tuesday. Happy Taco Tuesday. Happy Twerk Tuesday. Happy we made it through Monday, okay? And that is always something to just do a little quick praise break for, okay? That was a tongue twister right there. Anywho, what's up, everyone? I'm Shay Parker. If you do not know me, I am one of the co-hosts from the AM Click Morning Show on 92Q Jams in Baltimore. And welcome to our ICareLIVE. Now, if you've never been to an ICareLIVE before, then get ready for a party, all right? Get ready for an interesting, informative, educational conversation. And that's exactly what it is, truly a conversation. Now, if you didn't know, June is Pride Month. Yay! Woo, 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 woo. So happy Pride to all of those who are a part of the LGBTQ plus community. Happy Pride to all of the allies of the LGBTQ plus community. I definitely identify and consider myself one of those people who are not standing in front or behind those who we love in the community, but standing beside them. So welcome to our ICareLIVE. If you are not familiar with iCare Baltimore, this is an initiative that 92Q and Radio 1 is a part of, where we really try to shine a light on all of the wonderful things that are happening in Baltimore. Not just the bad things, because it can get a little heavy when you're watching the news, or even when we're talking on the radio about the different crimes that are happening, whether they're against, our loved ones in the LGBTQ plus community, or whether they're against our kids, our elderly. And iCare Baltimore is all about shining a light on those people who are truly doing the work in our community to make it a better place. But those who are just doing good things, we want to make sure that we recognize and we acknowledge those things as well. So thank you for joining us for our ICareLIVE, all about Pride Month today. And we are talking about a serious issue, and that is domestic violence within the LGBTQ plus community. So welcome once again. Now, I have a few of my friends along with me who are going to join this discussion. Again, people who are on the front lines, especially, here in Baltimore, those who are doing the work, and they have a plethora of information and resources that they are ready to share with you, especially when it comes to combating domestic violence in the LGBTQ plus community. So I'm going to bring up my very, very first friend, Lonnie Wayne Walker, who is the founder and the CEO of JDY Baltimore. How are you, Lonnie?
I'm doing good. And yourself?
Yes, I am doing wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes. Now, I want you to take 10 seconds really quickly to tell everybody who you are, what your organization does, and how you got here tonight before I bring on our other friends.
My name is Lonnie Walker. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. I live in Baltimore, Maryland now. I'm the founder and CEO of JDY Baltimore. JOY is an acronym which stands for Just Our Youth. We're an outreach organization that works with runaway, homeless, displaced youth with a focus on the LGBTQ community, but we serve all youth. How did I get here today? Merrick Moses, a very dear friend of mine, asked me, could I be a part of this panel for today? And I said, of course.
Of course. Well, we want to thank you for joining us. We appreciate the work that you're doing. And that was one of the best elevator pitches I've heard in my life. So shout out to you. Okay. Now, moving right along, we are going to bring on another good friend, Londyn Smith, Richelieu. And Londyn, please forgive me if I butchered your last name. Okay. Londyn is the director of the Office of LGBTQ Affairs. And I'm going to give you 10 seconds as well to let everybody know who you are and what your organization does.
Sure. My name is Londyn Smith de Richelieu. I am the Richelieu. It's French. I am the director. I sit on the mayor's cabinet. I am the director of the mayor's office of LGBTQ affairs, as well as the executive director of the LGBTQ commission. I was brought here also by my dear friend, brother Merrick Moses, who also works for Baltimore City at our amazing agency, MONSI, which is the mayor's office of neighborhood safety and engagement. And I am pleased to be here to talk around these causes. One of the things, particularly around Pride Month, we're here for Pride. Pride is not only a party, but it's also a protest. And we need to use these times to capitalize and really discuss, LGBTQ justice and equity. So I thank you so much, Shay, for welcoming us here today.
Yes, absolutely, for sure. Thank you for joining us. Now, our third friend who is on this panel tonight is Tramour Wilson. He is the Senior Director of Community Engagement, Policy Advocacy, and Strategic Partnerships for the Pride Center of Maryland. Hi, Tramour.
Hey Shay, thank you for the great introduction.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Now, do you need your 10 seconds or you want to wait?
Yeah, it'd probably be like 4. My name is Tramour Wilson. I also go by Trey. I was invited here as well by Merrick Moses. I lead the senior director for the Pride Center of Maryland, which we also lead Baltimore Pride, which we're gearing up for in Baltimore, which is going to be an amazing event. And we have over 30 resources and programs stretching from Baltimore City all the way out to the whole state of Maryland, reaching Prince George's County, as well as far as like Ocean City, Maryland. So I'm just definitely glad to be here with these other esteemed panelists.
Yes, thank you so much, Tramour. He said, we're not just in Baltimore, we stay wild, honey, okay? I know that's right. Now, last but certainly not least is our friend Eden, and she is the Prevention, Education, and Training Coordinator for Turnaround Incorporated. Hi, Eden.
Hey, thanks for having me, Shay. Like you said, I'm Eden. My pronouns are they and she. I am the Prevention, Education, and Training Coordinator for an organization called Turnaround. We serve folks affected by intimate partner violence, sexual violence, and human trafficking in Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and Howard County. And I myself am a second-generation survivor of domestic violence and sexual violence. And so I do this work because of a deep personal connection, a deep familial and ancestral connection to this work, and a deep desire to see so much less need for it in my community.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you so much, Eden. Again, thank you for joining us. You guys did not have to be here under any circumstance. And we just really appreciate you for not only sharing this information and these resources with us, but also for just all of the work you do in the community. So that's first and foremost. But let's hop into this discussion, okay? Because I know it says panel. That is like one of the words that I hate, because I really just like for things to be, a conversation. For everyone who is on Facebook or Instagram or on our Radio 1 websites right now watching this is a conversation that we want you to actively engage and be involved in. If you have a question, or even if you have a thought, a comment, please do put it in the chat online, and we will make sure that we address it. Now, this panel, again, we're celebrating Pride Month, but I love what Londyn said about this also needing to not only be a party, but be a protest as well. And one of the issues that we truly need to confront within the LGBTQ plus community is domestic violence. So my first question, and Londyn, you can take this one. Can you talk a little bit about what domestic violence looks like within, our community? Because a lot of times I think those who may be outside of the community or not as close to it think that it looks completely different from maybe domestic violence situations in other relationships or in other situations. So I just want us to first get a basic understanding of what that might look like.
Yeah, and so one of the things that we need to first take into consideration is, there are different levels of abuse, right? So you have emotional abuse, you have physical abuse, you have sexual abuse, you have financial abuse, and all these different paradigms of abuse. Unfortunately, a lot of people that are a part of the LGBTQ community, and particularly non-binary and trans communities, don't feel as though they fit within any of those paradigms, right? And unfortunately, when they're trying to access the resources and to find what IPV is, those resources don't seem to include them, or the definitions don't seem to look like them, or the optics just aren't there. So intimate partner violence, basically it occurs when the person asserts power and control over their partner. And that's, for me, it seems like that. I look at it as a more so around control, because I don't like to look at intimate partner violence, particularly from the lens of just being like, of physical abuse, right? So I try to look at it from the lens of power and like where the dominance and where the power is. One of the things that is particularly unique to LGBTQ intimate partner violence is outing, outing the other partner, when a person, is threatening to out the other person or is afraid to come forward because they may out themselves or out their partner. That is a very, very specific dynamic within IPV and LGBTQ relationships. Then there's also the other aspect that when you do, and particularly when you're a Black trans woman, let me say this, when you call the police, you become the suspect, not the victim oftentimes, right? So when the police come, you instantly become othered. It's not let's just say if a person's in survival sex work, right? The police come, you're responding to a situation, right? An intimate partner violence situation or otherwise. And the person instantly, let's just say if they were in a hotel and they're assuming you're in a hotel, so you're escorting or you're doing sex work. And so instantly the questions change from, are you okay? How can we help you? To what did you do to deserve this? Like, what are you doing? And did you tell him? Did you tell him what you were? That's what happens when the police come. A lot of times for trans women in particular, did you tell him what you were?
Wow.
And so that's from my perspective, that's some of the most important pieces about this intimate partner violence perspective from the trans point of view.
Absolutely. Eden, also being a survivor of abuse, how do you look at this, and what are some things that those who may not be close to the community need to know about, domestic violence within the LGBTQ plus community?
I think it's important for folks to realize that verbal abuse is so normalized in the ways that people interact with us as queer people that it can often be hard for us to name and acknowledge and seek help for our own abuse. If we're used to being name called and ridiculed by our own family, by folks at school, if we've sought help for maybe other things that are going on in our life and we were misgendered or mistreated in those settings, then what can we do but expect to be treated the same way when we seek support for intimate partner violence? And so it's really important for us as queer people to have affirming voices around us that teach us how we should be treated and talked to. And it's also important for resources to prepare themselves to be of service to queer people before we get there. Your first queer client shouldn't be where you're practicing using affirming pronouns or using a name other than what somebody was assigned at birth, or addressing somebody by something other than what you would assume based on their appearance. Like, you should be ready for us before we need you.
I feel like that's a big one. Now, Tramour, I see you shaking your head to that one right there when it comes to, resources being prepared for the people who need these resources. How can we do better with that? And how does your organization, along with, of course, the other organizations that are represented here, do that?
Well, I think what Eden said was very true, right? Sometimes we use our practices when we get into that situation. So we're being very reactive rather than proactive, right? And I think that becomes the bigger issue. So as me, I've been leading organizations for the last, 10 or 15 years. And one of the things I've always preached and continue to preach is about being what it looks like to be proactive, right? So what it looks like to look at your clients and serve your clients, but not from your own perspective, but not from your own biasness, right? So not, what happens even in a lot of LGBTQ same gender loving ran organizations, there's still a group of folks who maybe widely a part of the spectrum, right? It may not understand, right? So it may be hard for a person who are a lesbian to understand what someone trans are going through, right? And vice versa. So I think it's really about just being as inclusive as possible and making sure you employ your staff with people that make up the community.
I like that. I like that a lot. And Lonnie, this question is for you. I'm going to throw this one at you because I know a lot of times, especially around, the internet rhetoric or language about, the LGBTQ community or, the issues that we need to face within the community. A lot of times it can be so harsh, right? And I'm not going to lie. I have friends who definitely want to learn more, but are sometimes scared to ask the questions because they're afraid that they're not going to ask the right way, or they're not going to say the right thing, or just be there or align in the right way that the community needs. What do you have to say to those people who want to learn more, but may be scared to take that step just because they don't want to be, ridiculed or offensive?
Well, we have to invite them in the room first, so that they're comfortable. Just like when we're invited to their spaces and we're asking for LGBTQ cultural competency at certain jobs, we have to invite them in the room and we have to teach them and we have to educate them. And until we educate everybody fully, then we can hold people accountable. But if they're not educated and they don't know the proper terms to use, or the he, she, or how, or they, or them, then we cannot hold them accountable until we start to educate them. And when we do educate them, we can hold them accountable. But, me being being from the projects, you know, some of the things that I know, I can go into the projects and people look at me like I'm crazy if I ask them about, you know, what's your pronoun, so forth and so on, because that's not taught in everyday neighborhoods. You know, it's taught in corporations, but in everyday neighborhoods, it's not taught. So we can't expect somebody to address me the right way when they don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So I like that. You don't know what you don't know until you don't know it, until you find out what you need to know. That's what my grandma always used to say. Now, this next question, I want to throw it to Eden once again. What are some of the barriers? I know Londyn talked about, you know, if you're in a situation and you call the police, especially if you're a Black, you know, trans woman, that you then end up a lot of times becoming the suspect. What are some other barriers, you know, that folks face, survivors face when they are confronted with these abuse situations?
Yeah, what Londyn said is absolutely right. And it's really important to have that perspective. And I think that when it comes to just looking at relationships as a whole, like folks still define relationship or marriage or couple as cisgender man, cisgender woman. And so anything outside of that, anything beyond that is looked at as, well, this is what y'all get for doing something different from the norm. Like you almost brought this abuse on yourself by not choosing to be in a traditional heterosexual partnership. And so when you have maybe a lesbian couple who is involved in a domestic situation, one person is masculinized, one person is feminized, the more masculine person is looked at as the abuser, and that could be absolutely wrong. Or you could have two male identified people or two masculine presenting people, and then it's like, oh, well, that's just bros fighting it out, rather than looking at it as this is a couple who is not engaging in healthy relationship behaviors. And so if folks who are in like crisis response positions are able to step away from their own definition of relationship as heterosexual man, heterosexual woman, and just look at relationships and couples as people who go through drama, who have issues, who disagree with stuff, who have communication problems and barriers, and like work through things just like any other couple works through things. Like that's what needs to happen in order for us to really get the type of crisis response that we need. If people are automatically coming into the situation looking to place blame according to how they're used to processing people or used to processing relationships, then they're going to be wrong and we're not going to get the services that we need.
Yeah. Wow. That's an interesting point. I want to dig into that a little bit more because that's deep rooted, right? Like that's a mental thing, almost like a community or a societal conscience that has to be reprogrammed, which we already know is going to take a lot of work and a lot of time. Where are we now from where we may have been 10 years ago with that perception, with, you know, those coming into a situation who are supposed to be providing help or resources, you know, having just sort of the right mindset coming in? Have we progressed? Are we taking steps back? I know we got a lot of work to do, but how do you all feel that it looks like right now?
Well,
go ahead, Londyn.
Oh, you want to go ahead? No, I was just going to jump in and say, and just piggyback off of just talking about some of the obstacles to accessing care that can become one of the issues. And like, particularly like when you look at like even the shelters, right? So someone will say, I want to get away, right? And then, okay, well, what shelter do I go to? Because they're denied access to a shelter, right? Or you're denied, so you could be a cisgender man and then denied, right? Because it's a male shelter and you're saying you're abused. Or you could be a trans woman or a non-binary person, then there's no shelter access. Or there can also be another situation where the person, because you all are, if you're same gender loving, and the person can end up coming to the same shelter that you're at, or the person can pose as your friend at the hospital, right? Those are all like little obstacles, like, because people are not aware this could be a same gender loving relationship, right? And also that, you know, even regardless, even if you are trans, being trans is a social construct, not a biological one. And that, you know, it's also gender identity and sexual orientation are mutually exclusive. So a trans woman can date another trans woman, right? Yeah. And that trans woman can come to the hospital and see her and pretend, oh, this is my friend. And then, the hospital staff lets that person come in and continue, further either antagonizing them or intimidating them not to seek help, right? And then there's the other piece, which is like the most important part, which is like the legal system, right? Some people don't want to be thrown into the legal system where when you do get there, they're making you go by your legal name, right, in the court. And there are best practices and protocols and guidances that are coming out to the courts on how to respond to that. But the paperwork piece, right? How the filings are going, how the paperwork, there's policy. So we have in Baltimore policy 317, which we have fair and impartial policing, right? We are under consent decree, and I've worked with our police department. We have very strict rules on reporting and on like taking, information when it comes to intimate partner violence, particularly with LGBTQ community and how they're supposed to respond. But some other cities don't have that. They don't, they don't go in and interview and investigate properly, right? And so those are some of the systematic barriers that just alone make it so hard for some people to even want to, even go to the next step. And so, that was my piece around like it's policy. Like we need to be looking at best practices and protocols nationally, right? And it goes beyond political lines and red and blue states. We're people. It's, a human experience, and we need to make sure that we are honoring people's human experience.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And they always try to make everything political, but everything is not political, especially when it comes to human life. Lonnie, did you want to jump in here and just sort of talk about where we are in changing this collective mindset? I know we can talk for days about it, especially when it comes, to the Black community and how we think, about these issues. But I just wanted you to get your thoughts in as well.
So we have come a long way from where we used to be, to where things were just not acceptable at all. But what I do want to say is most of the time, and on both sides, whether you're heterosexual or LGBTQ, we attract what we grew up and seen. And so if we saw our parents, whether it be our mother or our father, in an abusive relationship, 9 times out of 10, we seek that out, not knowing that that's what we're seeking out. It's because that's what we're used to see. That's what we're used to see. And that was love for us. Mm-hmm. Even though it's not love, for us, that was love because the person stayed and never left. And so we fall right into those same traps. Now, where we are today is we are in a whole nother world today, whereas most youth in 2023, especially within the Black community, parents are more accepting than they were 20 or 30 years ago. Right. There are more opportunities for more youth now and LGBTQ and trans women and trans men than there were 20 and 30 years ago. And so for me, when I hear sex work and I hear people talking about sex work, I said, there are sisters out there who had to do that in order to survive. Today, you don't have to. And so if you do it and it's acceptable, it becomes a choice. Own it. And if you're comfortable doing it, own it. But don't say it like you have to do it for my sisters who died and had to do it 30 years ago.
Yeah. Can I just jump in on that part too, Lonnie? But not about the sex work, but the piece around how we watch parents do it. Unfortunately, in community, a lot of times, and because it is so pervasive, that gender roles define sometimes how we are, because people are trying to be validated in their gender role. So toxic masculinity, right? It's uplifted because people feel like, hey, if I act this way, then I'm masculine. If I act this way, then I'm feminine. And that's a very dangerous thing.
That's where the whole term butch queen comes from.
Yeah, and the whole term's butch. And, it's just so many different dynamics within our community alone, just even the terminology and how some of these things, a lot of the behaviors and things, even if you look at ballroom culture, right? And a lot of the uplifting and westernized beauty, right? These things have been learned and programmed into us for so long. Yeah. And that it really takes a lot of this. The first step to any of this is healing from a lot of the patriarchy of the normalization of some of these things, that these westernizations, some of these things that were not a part of our culture and who we are, and people love to bring up as Black people, because we're so galvanized by the church, and we bring up our African background and all that. But if you really look at actual African history, there was not this big separation of this gender separation, gender roles. There was a coupling of it, right? There was this beauty in understanding what femininity was, and a beauty in understanding what masculinity was, and a beauty in understanding the combination of them, right? If you look at a lot of old cultures, and so that becomes a dangerous thing. So I'm glad you brought that up, Lonnie, too. A lot of the stuff is people believe is culturally programmed into us, and it's our lived experience.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that makes this an even more layered discussion when we talk about when you throw the Black on top of it as well. It makes it an even more, layered conversation, and something that we have to look at, from all angles, because we do live a very different experience, than those who are not Black, or who don't identify as Black. So I really appreciate you all for bringing that up, because listen, I say this all the time on the radio. I'm Black, and I'm talking to my Black family members, okay? My Black community. And if you don't like it, you can turn the channel.
Okay.
Because we understand.
Yes, we get
it's kitchen table talk sometimes, and sometimes we gotta have, we gotta have kitchen table talk sometimes for people to get it, because like I just hosted that ball. It's called Buzzwords, Beyond Buzzwords and Binaries, and doing this work, we have all these buzzwords, but people outside of that don't do the work, they don't know what those words mean.
They don't know what they mean,
and you gotta sometimes get. My mother told me a long time ago, Londyn, you got to stop using the dollar word, baby. Sometimes you got to use a dime word. Stop using them dollar words, to make sure everyone can understand exactly what you're talking about to get your point across. And yeah, sometimes we got it. Like that's when you mentioned that question, Shay, about questions. No question is a wrong question, right? Now, how you formulated it might come off wrong. I don't mind when people ask me certain things. You can ask me anything you want, because I would prefer to answer it than let another person answer it incorrectly.
Yeah,
I want to be asked, because now I can educate you. Something that we're not doing in the community. We're not educating. Because when I first came into the life, I remember my mother asked me, who's the man and who's the woman? And I just looked and I laughed. But I laughed because she didn't know.
Right.
She didn't know, because back in that day, it was either a lesbian, a dyke, a butch, a bulldagger, a faggot, a sissy. So now the words have changed so much. Yeah. And it's so funny because we're not following our own narrative. Let's be clear about that. Because in the Black community, most of us go by SGL, same gender loving. Now, in the other people community, your other cousins, it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L. And it's like every year another letter is added.
Yeah.
And it's just like, when do we stop adding letters? Because at the end of the day, even when it comes down to marriage equality, if they didn't want to get married, we wouldn't have marriage equality. Because it ain't about us.
Yeah, right.
Be real clear, it ain't about us.
Yeah. And you know what? Let's dig into that a little bit too before we move on to some of, the questions that we have planned. When it comes to the fight and really confronting these issues, crossing between Black, white, however you identify yourself, how is us as those who are in the Black community, when we have to cross those lines, how can we properly align ourselves and assert ourselves to make sure that our issues, are being acknowledged and are being addressed? Because, the LGBTQ community is not the only community where we've seen this happen, right? We saw this happen with women's suffrage, all right? Our other cousins wanted us to fight and wanted us to march and wanted us to be on the front lines, to vote. They got the right to vote. And then we turned around and still couldn't vote. And we're like, hey, what about us? Are we going to fight for us now? And it was a totally, different situation. Do you face some of those issues, when you are on the front lines in this fight as well?
Well, we're going to continue to face those issues. And at the end of the day, we don't need to care about their issues and what they're fighting for. We need to create our own.
Yeah. We
need to create our own lanes, because just like the Oscars, so what, you didn't win the Oscars? We have the BET Awards. We have the Honors Award. Create our own within. The reason why Black Lives Matter exists is because two lesbian women said our lives did not matter. And we needed to start almost like starting the civil rights movement all over again.
Yeah.
But for Black Lives Matter, and under Black Lives Matter falls everything. And for us as LGBTQ, we need to put ourselves in those rooms of the Black Lives Matter meeting and make sure we're heard in those meetings, because we fall under Black Lives Matter. Yeah. Whether it's Black trans, Black gay, Black bi, Black non-binary, Black anything, we all matter.
Yeah, I definitely, and I want to give Eden or Tramour, do y'all want to speak first, or?
Oh yeah, go ahead, Tramour.
Yeah, I guess I came back on at a real hard question, right?
You can handle it.
I was like, "Ooh, all right, cool." But I guess from my perspective, and from I guess the work that I do, answer your question, yes, it comes out very often. So my work background pattern has started with youth. I started in youth, working with youth education, youth mentorship, and then I developed from that and working in the Black community as a whole. And then I moved and started grooming into the LGBTQ same gender loving community, right? So I'm hit constantly, right? Like, well, what agenda are we pushing? And a lot of things are a scapegoat, as you all said. They will put a black face up there, right? It's a scapegoat. And we fall into that scapegoat. You'll see policies, let's slap a black face on it because we know that's going to help them get us pushed, but it really ain't about us, and it ain't really for us. So then we have to say, well, we're supporting policy, well, we're supporting legislation, or whatever it is we supporting. Well, what really impact does this have on me as the black body? You know what I'm saying? Because when we talk, and I'll use for a prime example, the LGBTQ was something happened in Maryland. We try to make LGBTQ businesses minority businesses, which sound good if you're part of the LGBT community. But then you think about what percentage of LGBT people really own businesses. They don't look like me. Yeah. So I can't support something that could be beneficial for me and my community because I know in real term that I was the scapegoat in order for these folks to have their way. So it's a point in time when we have to think back and look strategically at everything we do in order to make those decisions. So it happened to me every single day. I have to think before I do anything. I mean, everything I have to think before because I really have to look at what's the impact to my community. And I have more than one community as a diverse black man.
Right. And you know what I love to tell people sometimes, because it's so much happening in the world, right? Everyone wants you to pull up your bootstraps for every issue. And I love what you said there, Tramour, about, looking back strategically pretty much at where we're placing our energy and our efforts and how that energy and those efforts are impacting our community, in the best possible way versus everyone else. I mean, we love everybody else, right? Go. But at the end of the day, we got to be real about us being busy being black in America. Okay. That's what we busy doing sometimes. So moving on to our next question.
I wanted to jump in on that one.
Because this is so crazy because so for me, my fight is so different because not only am I black, I'm a man, and then I'm gay. So I got to deal with being black first. Exactly. Being a man walking in this world. And then when they find out I'm gay, it's a whole nother, bunch of stuff I got to deal with. Yeah. So, I've always asked myself, and please, y'all, don't beat me up for this. When did LGBTQ rights trump black rights?
We don't have the answer for you, Lonnie.
But wait.
Because that's my struggle every day, being black first. And being a man.
And I just want to just say one quickly, because I sit in a very different space, and because I work in government, right? And so, though I am an activist and an advocate, and I do the community work, that's my background. That's who I am, and I'm a part. It's the duplicity, like, of working for the community that you are a part of. Is such a difficulty. It can be conflicting, and there can always be a conflict of interest. And I sit in a very, it's a compromising space, right? And so one of the things for me is that what I've realized is that I use my place of privilege to get in, to change the menu at the table so that everyone can eat, because a lot of this stuff backs down to policy, right? Nothing is happening. We could talk till we blue in the face, but nothing's happening without the money. And nothing's happening without the policy, right? So we got to be strategically placed in all the places that we need to be to make things happen. And someone can call you a sellout and say, oh, you're working in government, you're doing this, but you got to have people there. I see it daily. I see when things happen. I see when things are happening. But if I was not in a room to give my perspective as a community member, where would we be sometimes? I would wonder what the decision would be in that space sometimes if I wasn't there to actually to be a voice, right? And the other piece about that is, like, when you're black people, right? We don't have the privilege of having these neighborhoods. You go places and they have, it's Mount Vernon, and you go to Chelsea and you go everywhere else and they have neighborhoods, right? As black people, we don't have the privilege to have neighborhoods, right? But what we do have is we all live together. If you're gay in the projects. If you're trans in the projects. And your life and you living and the things that you're doing, it's not about, oh, I'm trying to be, you're trying to survive. You're trying to be passable to get from this bus stop to the next so you don't get the rocks off. You're trying to live. You're trying to make it, right? And people don't understand that it goes deeper than what people believe these surface level issues are. It's a lot deeper. It's survival for particularly for a lot of trans people that are living in these places, because we don't have that privilege to get up and go and run to a neighborhood, We can't do that. So when I do the work in my office and things I'm doing, I look at it from not just the lens of an LGBTQ lens, but I look at it from particularly as a Black woman. I look from that lens because we have to have solidarity across movements to get our things to happen because we live together. We can't like separate the issues, because they're conflated. They're in one space.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely one of the issues for sure within, our community, whether you feel like you're a part of or you're an ally of the LGBTQ plus community. I know, a lot of Black folks see it as separate, separate issues from Black issues. And I think that it truly, truly starts there when we realize that something that affects one of us, two of us, three of us, that it affects all of us, we can move forward. But in this age, it's like if it's not happening to you, you don't care about it until it happens to you or it happens to somebody that you love.
Right. I'm glad you said that because I hate writing grants. And in a grant, I have to put down that I serve LGBTQ people or LGBTQ youth. Why can't I just be I serve youth across the board? But you have to specify, else they'll look at you. Well, oh, this is not a safe organization to send youth to because they don't have in their language that they serve LGBTQ youth. Well, we live in one world, and at the end of the day, I'm serving all youth across the board. But now I got to specify in order for you to send LGBTQ youth my way that we work with them.
Yeah.
And it's unfair.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just want to welcome those who have just joined the live. Thank you for joining us on this Tuesday evening. We want to welcome you to the ICareLIVE When the Rainbow is Not Enough. We're talking about domestic violence in the LGBTQ plus community. And clearly this conversation is very layered, right? We want to make sure that it's a conversation. Feel free to pop in with your comments or with your thoughts or with your questions. And we're really just getting to it. I like having real conversations. We ain't going to be on this panel sugarcoating the thing.
Well, since you like having real conversations, who's the rainbow for? Because see, the last time I looked at rainbows, it was in the Wizard of Oz. So I don't specify. The rainbow don't make me nor break me.
Yeah, and that's the dangerous. And when you just said that, Lonnie, too. Also, a lot of people, when we bring up LGBTQ and we bring up all these terms, unfortunately, a lot of those terms are not created by people of color, and so or Black people. Let's just say black, even though we're, so it's like the terms are very important to how a person identifies. And, just to give an example. So I was doing a panel for, something we're doing for the city, and it was Lesbian Day of Visibility. And I was talking to a Black woman and I asked her, would she do it? And she's saying gender loving, but I referred to her as a lesbian and she said, oh, I'm not a lesbian, I'm gay. I'm this, and she refused to, she didn't refuse, but she said that's not what she identifies as. She would prefer if I find someone else. And I understood where she's coming from. And that's the same, Lonnie. If you're doing your grants, some Black children may not identify. They might even have the terminology for how they identify. So we have to, I find a danger sometimes in the terms and where the terms aren't using the terms. And just even expanding them to maybe, I don't know, we've been so locked into these specific terms, but where we're part of defining those terms, where we're part of
following their narrative.
So if
they're jumping on their narrative.
If I can jump in really quickly, that will kind of take us back to the question that Shay asked. When, are we having a difficult finding that bridge between serving LGBTQ and the Black community or what that looks like? I think one of the big ones that kind of ties in what both of you all says is when we're servicing people, I find it really hard to actually do our most effective work when we're only targeting LGBTQ people, right? Because who is that?
Right.
Who is that? If someone posted a rainbow and said, hey, can you, this is for you. No. Are you going to come? No. So who is that? Who are we alienating? So by putting that box up, we are alienating a whole plethora of people. As we know, there's some people who decide their trajectory in life at 50 years old, right? So if you can decide who you are at so late in age, we are alienating so many people by putting them in this box so early. So we have to extend, no matter what type of work we're doing, into making sure we're fitting in the whole body and the whole identity, because it's so hard. It's so hard to actually doing that work.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people get hung up on the terms as well, and that a lot of times impacts the conversation negatively, because you know, when you have these terms and you're trying to make sure you're using the right one and you're tipping around, you know, on eggshells, and you're not really saying what you want to say or asking the questions that you want to ask, it just really does the conversation a disservice, because then we're not being as real and as transparent as we need to be to really even talk to each other about these things. So I love that you guys are saying this and expressing this. I hope that there are, you know, people on this live right now who may feel a little bit more comfortable about being a part of the community, or just being an ally, because again, these are not just issues that we know nothing about, that are far from us, that are not impacting us. If you are a human, these issues impact you, point blank, period. So thank you for that to all of you. Another question, and this is going back to what Londyn said about a form of abuse that is used sometimes in intimate partner relationships or LGBTQ plus domestic violence relationships. The outing part of it, or using the outing as abuse. Can we talk about that? Because we not only see that in intimate partner, you know, relationships, but we also see that with those outside or within the community outing each other, or using that as an intimidation tactic. Can we just expound on that a little bit more?
Oh, I can.
Who want to go first?
Listen, I'm a black. Listen, I'm about to out my own self right now, okay? At this point. But as a black trans woman, right? And it is particularly hard, and for me, when it comes to dating, right? And this narrative that I'm going to tell, like I'm going to out, like, and I've been in circumstances where, let's say I'm dating someone and we're together, we're in a relationship, and then you know, there becomes a point, there's this fear that I would at some point out them, or someone would try to out them. And like, baby, there's nothing to out. I'm a woman. There's nothing about me that needs to be outed. Okay. Everything about me is what it is. Okay. From here to toe, everything is what it is. So it's like, I don't need to out myself. And in the end of the day, you know, there's this narrative that's put out by cis hetero people that trans people are like, you know, tricking, quote unquote, tricking people, right? But there's never the idea put out that there are trans attractive people in the world, right? People who specifically and solely only date trans people, right? That's who they date, that's who they like, that's what they want, that's who they love, right? And so, you know, but people don't put that. There's this narrative that everyone is tricking someone, and that, you know, when a trans woman is murdered or a trans woman is killed, it's because she tricked someone. But that's usually not the case. The case is that the person is fearful that they will be outed in their love. So I can give you a good example. There was a young lady who was in New York, okay? And she was dating a guy, and they were together. They were literally living together in a relationship, a couple. And so they were walking, strolling, and then he passed some people that knew him, but they also knew her from her. They knew her from her past. Okay. And so she kindly went over, and I guess either she spoke to him or she was telling him to come on. And they said, do you know what he did? He pulled out a gun and shot at her. This is who he was with. This is the person he was in a relationship. They were together. And there was no incident where they were fighting or nothing. And the bullet grazed her. She laid there and played dead. But if for not, she did not do that, she would not have survived. So it's like, there's this unfortunate thing that goes, and we need to talk, this is something that goes, we need to talk, when Black trans women are being killed, when you look at the news, it's Black men that are killing Black trans women. It's like, we have to keep the conversation real, and we need to keep it raw and keep it, we're going to talk all the way. Yeah. When you see these stories, and just now, I just lost a friend in Atlanta. 2 friends were just killed. They were both killed by 2 Black men in Atlanta, right? So it's like, when are we going to start having these hard conversations amongst our family, and like these having kitchen table talk in the room? And it starts with cis women. Cis women are a big part of why how can shape these conversations, because a lot of times
I was wondering if you was going to take it there. I was like, can we talk about how
let's keep it.
We need to let people be who they want to be.
Yeah, you got Black cis women play a large role in protecting Black trans women. And I'm going to say that again for the people in the back. But Black cis women play a large role in protecting and keeping Black trans women safe, because a lot of times men are acting in a way that they are afraid that Black cis women will look down upon them and who they are, whether it's their mothers, their ex-girlfriends, their aunts, whatever. And sometimes I've realized, in my experience, and I can speak from my experience, men are not, they're worried about what their dads think, right? And their brothers, but more so always worried about what women think about them. And so I was in a recent situation with a guy, and his fear was that a girl, his girlfriend, would find me out, right? And he got aggressive, very aggressive with, I never threatened to expose that or say anything, but he got kind of aggressive with me, and as if to put a little bit of fear in me, to say that if you were to ever, you know what I mean? And I saw that in his eye. I saw that, and I thought about it for a period of time. I thought about another incident where I was on the escalator in Atlanta, and a black cis woman decided to tell a Black man on the elevator. She didn't know. I sit in a place of privilege. I have passing privilege, whatever, passing privilege, pretty privilege, whatever they want to, whatever terms you want to use. I understand that I have the ability to pass, right? Some people don't have that privilege to pass. And so when they're out just living their authentic lives, being who they are, someone decides to say, oh, you know what that is, who she is, right? And tell who she is. And the guy then got riled up. Never mind the fact that he was the one initiating talking to her. She was ignoring him. She was not interested in him. She didn't want his phone number. She didn't want to have any conversation with this guy. But he was so persistent and aggressive and demanded her number. And when a woman said that she was trans, he then wanted to become violent. Never mind the fact that he had autonomy over his own behavior. He was seeking her. He sought after her. She was not tricking him. He was seeking her, you know? But that Black cis woman engaged that conversation with that guy and antagonized him around it and teased him because he was interested in her. And that is a danger. So like, if we're going to talk, like, that's what, let's make sure we bring that to the table.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think we have to be able to recognize when we can lean in and be a bridge, and also, you know, help protect, you know, trans women or those who are, you know, within the community who are struggling with these different types of issues. Again, a lot of times when it's not super close to us, or we feel like we can't relate, you know, to a trans woman, or, you know, to a cis woman, we feel like she's not a part of us, or that, you know, she's not us. And we absolutely are all the same. One question though that I definitely wanted to ask, when you told this story about, you know, being in New York and the woman being with the man and him just taking out the gun and shooting her, do we see those type of situations often where there may not have been, you know, bright red flags, or there may not have been previous violent incidents that have happened, but because someone now is feeling the pressure of being outed, or someone from, you know, outside of the relationship is now questioning something, that triggers the violence?
So thank you for that, Londyn, because that was some really good information, and I think the listeners are going to adhere to that. But for me, there's two types of outings. There's when you are HIV positive and all your friends work for the organizations doing the testing, and now they're mad at you, and so now your business becomes the bar talk. When it's supposed to be confidential. And then there's the other outing of, you know, he's straight and you know he has a girlfriend, but you messing with him anyway, and he ain't giving you that much time, so now you want to tell his girlfriend. Stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. Because when LGBTQ people who are dating straight men, or so-called, I'll put the so-called straight men, because there's a whole lot of them, but the girlfriends don't know, and they tell you they bi. And see, my thing of bi is, you only bi if your girlfriend know and your boyfriend know. Okay. If your boyfriend only know and your girlfriend don't know, baby, you're creeping.
Can I add something to that? So I think there's a lot of types of outing, right? Like you just highlighted two, but I think there are a lot of types of outing. And regardless of the context, disclosing someone's sexual orientation or gender identity without their consent is an act of violence.
Yes,
it can really mess up their life. If somebody at your school knows that you go by a different name at school and they threaten to tell your parents, that can create violence at home. If somebody at a community center that you frequent knows that you dress different while you're there, and then you got to get changed real quick before you get picked up, and they threaten to show whoever's picking you up the skirt that you just took off. That can put you in a violent situation at home. And so when we're talking about domestic violence in the LGBTQ community, it's not just relationship violence. It's not just intimate partner violence. It's community violence. It's familial violence. Like there's so much violence enacted upon LGBTQ identifying people that, like I said before, it can be hard to name. It can be hard to acknowledge because it's just the norm of our existence. And sometimes it does take somebody sitting in a position of privilege to be like, well, I'm queer and I don't have to deal with that, so why should you? It takes somebody who has a different lived experience to be like, well, this wasn't part of my gender journey, or this wasn't part of my coming out story. I never had to be homeless. I never had to go without. I never had to engage in survival sex work or staying in a relationship I didn't want to be in, or whatever number of things that people have to do to survive when coming from a place of lack and coming from a place of not being accepted and not having the basic fundamental needs that a person needs to survive. We are all living in capitalism. We are all living in a world and in a society where you need money and a roof over your head to survive. And so oftentimes LGBTQ folks are put in positions where we have to make choices to honor our identity or not in pursuit of survival, to honor who we actually want to be and show up in the world the way that we want to show up in pursuit of survival. There have been people, there was actually something going around online recently. I don't know if it's true, but it got people to talking and thinking, and I appreciate it. But it was somebody who said that they're 17, their family's wealthy, and their grandfather's about to die, but the 17-year-old is ready to come out the closet. And the family is advising them, don't come out yet because you will be kicked out of the will. You will not get your inheritance because we know that grandpa is homophobic. And so this person is put in the unique position. I'm not in the position to tell this person what they should do, but this person is in the position to choose to live authentically now in a place of lack, or to live authentically later after their grandfather dies from a place of abundance. And they get to choose. And these are the choices that we have to make on a small scale, or on a large scale every single day. Sometimes multiple times in one day, you have to choose to honor your identity or to choose survival.
Am I wrong for telling him to take that money and live his life, live his best life?
No, you're not wrong, because his parents going to tell him, baby, keep quiet till grandpa shut them eyes. Get that dollar, get that coin.
Okay, hold on a little while longer. Now, listen, I know we're coming up on 8 o'clock here. Right. I know we're coming up on 8 o'clock here. I have two more questions that I definitely want you all to answer. The first being, if each of you could just expound on one sign that a loved one, that a friend, a sister, a brother, or even a coworker, one sign that we should be looking for to identify and potentially ultimately address, a domestic violence situation that we may see someone going through.
When they start telling you about their friend, what their friend is going through, they're really talking about themselves.
I can say another piece. In my experience, and I'll say, it always boils down to this a narcissistic person. And one of the things that a narcissistic person loves to do is separate you. They love to separate you from your family, your friends, your career. They want to get you in an isolated place so they can take control of you. So when you notice that a friend of yours is starting to kind of draw away from the group, starting to draw away from the office, starting to just draw away from the things that they love so much, there could be a problem.
Yeah.
Londyn mentioned before that there are multiple types of abuse, right? There's financial abuse, there's sexual abuse, there's verbal abuse, there's emotional abuse, and there's physical abuse. And all of those are forms of abuse that hurt and affect people, right? And so I don't want to hone in on physical abuse being like the most abusive type of abuse, because they're all damaging. But it can be the easiest to spot. When you see somebody who's wearing a scarf in the middle of the summertime, when you see somebody who has unexplained bruises, when you see somebody who is like looking like they just got beat up, and that's somebody you care about, ask why. Ask questions, and not coming from a place of judgment, not coming from a place of oh, well, if this person's hitting you, then we hitting back. don't threaten with your own intentions. Come from a place of valuing this person's safety and valuing this person's personhood, but keep your eyes open. It's amazing what people will do to protect themselves while they are in an abusive situation for the sake of their survival. If they know that staying in this abusive relationship is safer than living on the street or fighting it out in a shelter, then that's the choice that they've been put in the position to make. But it's our job as the people in their circle, the people who love them, to still let them know that they have other choices and other options, and that their safety is what is precedent. Their safety is the thing that is most important. And so if you see signs of physical abuse, don't be afraid to ask the people around you. Like, you might get an attitude. Somebody might tell you it's none of your business, and that's fine. They get to react that way. But you still get to show that you care, and you still get to show that there are more options than the abuse that they are enduring.
Yeah. And that's what ICare is all about. Thank you for that.
Some of them will protect their own abuser.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the last parts I want to share, I'll make it very short, is what happens a lot in different abusive relationships is if you see sometimes a friend of yours or a family member can't go anywhere without their partner, that has been a really huge sign. They can't go to the grocery store without their partner. They can't go around the corner. They can't come to your house. They can't go to the movies without their partner. Start to be a little concerned about that. And then also, if they are somewhere without their partner and they answer the phone every 5 seconds or text message, that's a big concern. That's a big concern for me, and it happens more than not. People like it because folks some days like, oh, they really care or they press, but it is a really big sign of some form of abuse.
Yeah. Wow. And my last question for you all, here I go with the 10-second thing again, because I know this conversation was just so good. I didn't even really get to dive into each of your organizations individually. So my apologies for that. You guys are just getting too good. The conversation was getting too good. But I want you all to again just give the name of your organization, your title, and what resources and information you provide that can help those who may be in domestic violence situations and how they can reach out to you. Lonnie, you go first.
So I do want to say, know your red flags. And when you see that red flag, run. So I am from JDY Baltimore. We are an agency that works with runaway and homeless and displaced youth. We connect young people and young adults to other organizations that can help with domestic violence. We help house young people and young adults 18 and up. And we are a plethora of many services. Come in. If we don't have it, we're going to make sure we connect you to it. And we're going to follow up with whoever we connect you with to make sure they're doing what they said they're going to do.
Okay, and that's Joy right there. We're gonna call y'all the plug, the connect. And Londyn, you want to take it away?
Sure. I am Londyn Smith de Richelieu, and I am the first trans woman to sit on the mayoral cabinet. I'm pretty excited to also be the executive director of the LGBTQ Commission, which effectively guides the work of the office. And we are not a direct service. We're an executive office of the mayor's office. So we don't do direct services. However, we partner with agencies like we've partnered with Pride Center and provided funding to Pride Center. We provided funding to multiple agencies. Would love to work with you, Lonnie. Cannot wait. One of the first emails I actually sent when I got into my office was to JDY Baltimore, and I think it went to the wrong email address, but I've reached out to your office. Would love to extend that offer to you. And also, I've worked with Annie Smith over at Turnaround, and I would love to work with you, Eden, as well. We are big with building partnerships around the city, making sure that our service delivery citywide is equitable. And so I'm here for that. Please check our page out, to the Baltimore City government page. You can check our page as well as our Instagram, Balti LGBTQ, as well as Balti LGBTQ on Facebook, and get up to date on all the things that we have going on.
Nice. Thank you so much, Londyn. And Eden, you're up next.
All right. Well, once again, I'm Eden. My title at Turnaround is the Prevention, Education, and Training Coordinator. What that means is that me and my team will come to your school, your business, your fraternity, your sorority, your nursing home, your softball league, whatever space that you are in, whatever space that you occupy, we will come to you and equip you with the tools to prevent violence right where you're at. We'll teach you about sexual violence, intimate partner violence, and human trafficking, and how to spot the signs. We will teach you about identifying relationship red flags and green flags so that you can get out of unhealthy relationships before they turn abusive. We will teach you about unpacking gender roles and how traditional definitions of masculinity and femininity are actually what's poisoning our dating pool. And so I say all of that to say that, yes, where policy is happening is absolutely like the powerhouse of what governs how we move, but we can do a lot to prevent violence and empower each other right where we are. And so you are more than welcome to connect with Turnaround for exactly that.
Thank you, Eden. And Tramour, last but certainly not least.
Awesome. Yeah, my name is Tramour Wilson. I also go by Trey. I am the Senior Director of Community Engagement, Advocacy, Policy, and Strategic Partnerships for the Pride Center Maryland. In short, I somewhat lead the Pride Center Maryland in a lot of different initiatives. We hover over 2 organizations, since Pride Center Maryland and Baltimore Pride. So Baltimore Pride is coming up soon, the 19th through the 25th in Baltimore. But as it related to domestic violence, we are funded to do violence prevention throughout the city of Baltimore, which is included interpersonal violence, family violence, and etc. We also have housing, rapid rehousing that can house individuals who have been, who are suffering through violence or trying to get away from their significant others, as well as family members. So if there's anything you need for the Pride Center Maryland, you can reach us at pridecentermd.org. My email address is tramour@pridecentermd.org, and then on all of our social medias, you can definitely reach us. I'm normally working around the clock, so I'm not a 9-to-5 type of individual. So if you need me, holler.
Shay, may I say one thing?
Yes, of course.
I would pray that we can do this more often and not just during the month of June, because at the end of the day, I'm SGL 365, just as well as I'm Black 365, and I don't need people to ask me to be on panels because it's Pride Month. So can we extend this outside of Pride Month, just like we only celebrate being Black in February, or we celebrate Juneteenth? And can we do this more often?
Yes, no, absolutely.
Don't glorify me because it's June.
No, I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. We need to be more active and just proactive and making sure that we're having these conversations more often. And I know sometimes people, get tired of talking, but talking is how we're going to get change, how we're going to get policies made, and how we're really going to move forward. So I'm with you, Lonnie, for sure. I'm mad that we even have to end the conversation because I had more things to hop into, but it's okay. We're going to do it next time. We're going to do it next time. We got to do a part 2 for everyone who is on the live. I just want to thank you for joining us. Once again, you don't have to be here. Our panelists, you didn't have to be here, but you are. And I think that's really the first step into really moving forward and just progressing in the way that we need to as a community. So this is our ICareLIVE. Now, the title is When the Rainbow Is Not Enough. But listen, Lonnie told us to throw it out the window. Okay, so we're going to call this The Conversation. Thank you for just expounding and being as real as you were, keeping it 100 about domestic violence in the LGBTQ plus community. And I hope to see all of you guys and hopefully meet you in person.
Yes, definitely.
Yes, for sure. Now, for those who are watching, make sure that you just head over to 92q.com, or of course, you can go to Magic's website on our Facebook pages. We have all of our panelists' information there, their name, their title, the organization that they're a part of. Now, we don't have their contact info because listen, sometimes people be crazy. We're not going to put it all up there. But if you go to their website, you'll be able to get that info and make sure that you connect with them. Thank you so much, everyone. We appreciate you.
Bye-bye.